Morning, Trainiacs. Since getting back from Challenge Roth, where I had a really, I would call it a successful race, going 9:41 in my first Ironman distance event ever, I've been getting a pile of questions about the nutrition plan that I used leading up to it. How should triathletes do a low carb triathlon training program that is going to still allow them to be fast, not cause them to be injured, sick, feel dumpy, and not risk a lot of the issues that come with keto dieting while also trying to perform at a high level? How can you get all of the benefits of low carb triathlon training without all of the drawbacks? We're going to talk about the complete start to finish process that you can use right now. So I want to start off by saying a lot of what I learned and went through was guided by Dr. Dan Plews. You've heard me talk about him a lot. We are going to talk about that process and a lot of what I did that you might have heard before, but I want to put everything together into one guide for you right now. Dan Plews is a PhD sports scientist in New Zealand. He is published dozens and dozens of times in things like heart rate variability, low carb triathlon training, things that affect us endurance athletes. In addition to that, he coaches pro triathletes like Taren and he's coached 3 pros to sub 8-hour Ironmans. He himself is also an amazing triathlete, having won Kona in 2018 as an amateur. The overall amateur winner was Dan Plews, setting the all-time amateur course record in 8:24. So the man doesn't just walk the walk, he talks the talk, and he knows what he's talking about, and he is who guided me throughout this entire low-carb Ironman training process. Now, if you want to learn more about the specifics, Dan has a company called EndureIQ.com where he has online courses that train you in how to use a lot of the methods that we are going to talk about and that I went through. He doesn't have that open all the time, but he is going to open up a limited amount of spots just to Trainiacs over the next couple of weeks. And if you want to make sure that you get in on those limited amount of spots, go to triathlontaren.com/theplews, where you'll get the starter pack that Dan and I put together of how to get started low carb triathlon training. And when Dan opens up those spots for his course, that's where we are going to announce it. So you have to be subscribed to that triathlontaren.com/theplews. Let's do this. For starters, why consider low carb triathlon training? It's not a fad. It's not to turn you into a fat burning machine and, be able to get by on nut butters or nothing during a race because you're metabolically flexible. Well, you are metabolically flexible, but it's really just physiology. And I'm going to tell you an example where over here we have traditional training. Over here, we will have low carb triathlon training and what happens over the course of, we're just going to use a 10-hour race, for example. In both races, you are going to burn about 1,000 calories an hour. You're going to burn about 10,000 total calories, and that is how much energy you're going to need for that race. In both races, you're going to start off with stored muscle and liver glycogen of around 2,000 calories. In both races, you're going to be able to consume up to about 60 grams of carbs per hour, which then totals 2,400 calories. But here's where it's different. In the traditional higher carb training approach, people tend to burn on average around 0.5 grams of body fat for that missing energy every minute, which then results in 2,700 additional calories. Over here, you have a total of 7,100 calories and a shortfall of 2,900 calories. What ends up happening with that shortfall is your body has to get that energy from somewhere. So what happens is it tends to break down your muscle tissues. That's why you start seeing people on the side of the run or on the side of the road losing power, losing their pace. really having a big hitch in their stride, it's because their muscles aren't functioning well anymore, because that 2,900 calories has to come from something. Now let's look at the low carb approach. If we are able to increase the amount of fat that you can burn over here up to around 1.2 grams of carbs every single minute, you're going to end up getting from that fat in our body that's stored around 6,480 calories throughout the course of the race. This then over here results in total available calories of 10,880. And what I experienced in Challenge Roth is that never did I feel hungry, never did I feel muscular breakdown, never did I feel functional breakdown. My muscles were a little bit sore the next day, but overall the race kind of felt easy until the last 15K when we're doing an Ironman. It's gonna get tough, but I was still able to function and hold the 5-minute kilometers and running without stopping for 42.2K. That's what you can accomplish with low carb triathlon training. Now, it's not as simple as just saying, I'm gonna lower my carbs. There's a process that you need to do. So here is the low carb, high fat progression that I went through. We started off with 3 weeks of not monitoring fat, not monitoring protein, not monitoring carbs. It was 3 weeks of a Whole30 diet, which you can get through that triathlontaren.com/the Plews. And during this 3 weeks on the Senza app, I started tracking what I was eating to start getting a sense of what had carbs, what didn't, how much did I need to eat based off of how many calories I wanted to have. This was also a time that because I was eating whole foods, the sugar levels were coming down. So my blood glucose in that period starts coming down, making it easier to burn a little bit of fat as fuel. After those 3 weeks, we then did a 3-week keto period. And this was the only time that we did anything resembling keto. The reason that it's only 3 weeks is because it's not sustainable to perform at a high level for endurance athletes while eating a keto diet strictly. So it's a 3-week tool where we restrict carbs down to 50 grams of carbs or less every single day from Whole30 food sources. And that is like forcing your body to say, all right, look, we are going to continue working out, albeit at this time it's at a very low intensity, doing pretty much every single workout in just zones 1 or 2, besides one workout that is a high intensity interval bike. But that's it. We continue working out. We work out largely at low intensity, restrict the carbs, and it's going to force the body to start accessing fat as fuel because there's nothing else. Then after that was the bulk of the training period. After that keto period, we brought the carbs back up to around 130 grams of carbs every single day on average. But the timing of the carbs was different depending on the day. And that's where we'll get into the next phase. Like I say, it's not just about lowering your carbs, you have to use those carbs specifically. So this is where we get into low carb, high fat triathlon training. So as I mentioned, the average amount of carbs that I was taking during this time was 130 grams of carbs. If you're a much, much bigger athlete, would go up to about 150. If you are a very small, light athlete, females, down around 100. But somewhere in that 130 has been found to be kind of the sweet spot. So that's what you target every single day. But what you change throughout the week is dependent on your workouts. Before your long endurance bike, your low intensity, really long ride, followed by a brick run, you don't have any carbs before or during. So you have things like nut butters, S-fuels, keeping the carbs basically at 0. You also do the exact same before your long run. And what that's going to do is it's just going to increase your body's ability to burn fat as fuel at the low end, the low energy aerobic intensities. There's a third workout, however, where you do the same thing, where you don't have any carbs before or during, and that's a race simulation day. So in my case, this was a 2.5 to 3.5 hour bike, followed by about a 40-minute run. And this is at race intensity or higher. So this is a higher intensity, more of a hard workout. And what we're doing here is the same thing. We're restricting the carbs before and during, having the same types of things, nut butters, fat-based coffees, S-fuels, things like that, so that we can not just increase our body's ability to burn fat at a low intensity, we want to be able to increase the body's ability to burn fat at a higher intensity as well. And then all of the other workouts, I still had carbs. I would have oatmeal before some high intensity interval workouts. I would have fruit after workouts. I would have that 130 grams of carbs per day spread more evenly during all the other workouts throughout the week. So what this is doing is it's allowing my body to burn fat at a low intensity, burn fat at a high intensity, but also perform at a high intensity really well when we start doing high intensity VO2 max training. So we're hitting all aspects and not succumbing to that issue that many people go through when they start lowering their carbs, that they lose their top end, that they feel dumpy, or that they can really only go at very low intensities all the time. This way, you end up becoming a well-rounded athlete and you can access all different kinds of fuel. Then that comes to the last thing. How do you actually end up racing? Am I throwing avocados in my jersey? Not at all. That's where we get to the final thing that I want to talk about, and that is train low, race high. The concept of training low and racing high is that you train on lower carbs. You allow your body to learn how to function with a slightly restricted carb state. Then, because carbs are so easy to access as fuel, you can turn them into energy immediately. Your best performance is going to come if you end up racing on carbs. So when I raced in Challenge Roth, I had 500 to 600 grams of carbs throughout that race. And I did it exactly the same way that I would do a half Ironman. Now, if you don't know yet how to do your nutrition, you can go to triathlontaren.com/triathlon nutrition guide, and that will calculate for you exactly how many calories you need to take during a sprint, an Olympic, a half Ironman, an Ironman distance race. You take that, you use the schedule that we lay out in that free guide, and you just take that from carbs. And what ended up happening is I had very, very minor stomach issues in the race at Challenge Roth that was just alleviated by having a little bit of water to dilute whatever was going on in my stomach. Simple as that. I had no fade at the end of the bike. I held even power throughout the entire 180K. I had no fade in my pace throughout the entire marathon, did not walk one bit, and held 5-minute kilometers like clockwork throughout the entire race. And I don't think I've really said this because I think it sounds kind of bragging, boastful, almost like a little bit of a jerk, like I'm not respecting the distance. But right up until the last 15K of the marathon, it felt easy. I remember at 25K actually thinking that I didn't deserve to feel that way because it's an Ironman that I was doing. Now, of course, it got very hard for that last 15K, but it wasn't so hard that I was in the bushes, that I was walking, that I was having stomach issues. All the people that I was passing and seeing the struggle on their face, I wasn't going through that because my muscles hadn't broken down so badly because I was just getting my fuel from fat. And in the days leading up to the race, I increased my calories in the 2 days out and the day before to about 200 grams of carbs. And the morning of the race, I had a small little bit of oatmeal with UCAN Superstarch as a very complex carbohydrate that is going to provide energy for tens of hours in that race. And with all that, it wasn't a terribly restricted diet. A lot of people are saying, well, are you going to go back to high carb? Are you going to stick with keto, low carb? Frankly, it doesn't feel like keto. It doesn't feel like low carb. It just feels like we're manipulating certain workouts here and there very easily, changing some of the sports nutrition that I had from, say, Gatorade and a sugary drink to something more like an S-Fuels, changing bread and pasta to have carbs before a workout to either a fat-based coffee or a complex carbohydrate like a UCAN Super Starch. So it's just changing small little things that allowed me to have a performance that is better than I've ever had in any race. I have never once in a race had the run be the strongest part of the race. And I did this time because I ran strong the entire way through. So now, like I say, if you are interested in learning more about this, go to triathlontaren.com/the Plews. Now that is not Dan Plews' course, but that's a mini course, a free download that we've put together with Dan, and everyone who has signed up to get that free download will be notified of when Dan opens up his actual course on enduriq.com. So go check that out. I'm sold. I'm sticking with it. Total game changer. Total game changer. Now, before I say later, I want to say what's up to Glenn and Claire Ward, who said hi to me at the pool. Now, Claire, these swim lasers are for you. And on that note, if you aren't already subscribed and you like things like this low carb training, hit that subscribe button below. Later, Trainiacs. Swim lasers.